Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Sentimental Value, starring Renee Riencevi, so forgive me if I said that wrong, Stellan Skarsgård, Inga Ibsdotter Lilius, and Elle Fanning, directed by Joachim Trier. Now, this is the first time I've seen this movie, so let's just get straight into this. This is a Norwegian film. Yeah, let's get into it. As little girls in the 6th grade, Nora and Agnes Borg have their way of sneaking out of their house in Norway, which is a beautiful location and a beautiful home, as the cinematography was beautiful in Norway throughout, until eventually their father Gustav, played by Stellan Skarsgård, leaves the house, and years later their mother passes away while as an adult. Nora, played by Renee, oh my god, I'm going to say this wrong, Riensve, forgive me if I said that wrong, is an actress on Broadway, as she's not prepared for performing the show, as she rips her dress because she can't breathe in the dress, while her boyfriend on the stage crew slaps her because she asked him to. And eventually she gets out to perform the show on Broadway, which did make me a bit nervous for that show, that she was going to fuck it up, while the opening score to The Shining plays in the background, and Nora comes off relatable for someone who has stage fright at this point. I like her as well as the other characters. We get introduced on screen. Nora is performing the show and gets through it, and we move on to a funeral service for her and Agnes's mother, as Agnes, played by Inga Ibsdotter Lilius, thanks everyone for coming to the funeral service, and Gustav happens to show up at the house for the service and shows up in Nora and Agnes's life after all these years, while Agnes has a son that Nora relates with more than her father. And in my opinion, Stellan Skarsgård steals the movie, as this is his best performance in this whole movie, in my opinion. While don't get me wrong, the other performances were fantastic, as well as, but like Sean Penn in one battle after another, Stellan Skarsgård steals the movie for me, and the other actors, in my opinion. Next day comes and Nora meets with Gustav under his request at a restaurant where he asks her to be in his new movie he wrote the script for, as it's about her life, and he believes she's the perfect person for the role. But she declines because she doesn't want to work with her father, because he never has a scene. He has never seen her act on stage, despite he doesn't like theater as much as cinema. And she walks away from him, and we move on to Gustav at a film festival, where a retrospective about his films. He talks about a movie he did 20 years ago and explains Agnes was the kid in the movie. And it is confusing at times on what it's talking about. And it takes a while to get it, but eventually I got it. And so far this is going to win Best Foreign Language Film, despite I've never seen The Secret Agent yet. But I'll get there, as 80% of this movie was subtitled, but this is so far a pretty good film. Gustav meets and has dinner with Rachel Kemp, played by Elle Fanning, and another fantastic performance as they hang out on the beach, and he explains the film he was going to do with Nora, and he decides to put her in the role of Nora, as he gives her the script and runs off with a horse, and suddenly Gustav has a heart attack of some kind and mixes medication with alcohol, which isn't the best idea. As we move on to Nora with the stage guy whom she asked to slap earlier in the film, named Jacob, I'm guessing, sleep together, as he leaves a couple of minutes later. In the scene, as she goes over to Agnes's place to hang out with her nephew, as he wants to marry her, which was sweet, and the editing choices did take a while to explain what was really happening, until eventually I got it, but I was okay with it. Nora and Agnes go to their old house to clean up some things, as well as take things from the past, until Gustav arrives at the house, and Rachel, as they're planning on shooting the movie at the house in Norway, and he's planning on staying there while filming the movie, and eventually Nora explains Gustav wanting her for the movie, as she declined, and Nora runs out of there and escapes the same path they did when she was a kid, with Agnes and Rachel getting a photograph with Agnes because she was in the film in the festival, as he shows Rachel around for scenes in the movie. And the production design and set decoration was well done in that whole scene, as well as in the movie. Nora goes to a therapist and explains her past, and this is when I had difficulty understanding it, mostly on my first viewing, as we go back to Nora and Agnes as little girls back in the day when their grandmother was alive, as she used to cause all kinds of trouble, like having parties in the middle of the night, and how she had Gustav, and we get how he grew up in the house with his mother, wife, and we move on to present day, where they go to a premiere at Netflix, and Rachel and Gustav go to an interview with a reporter who asks stupid questions from TikTok to begin with, until Gustav kicks the reporter out for asking questions from TikTok, which I'm not on, nor am I the biggest fan of. But we move on to Nora going to a picnic with her stage friends, and Jacob breaks up with Nora afterhand, and the screenplay is great, but I don't think it'll get the Oscar, but it was great in my opinion. Nora comes to Agnes's place to celebrate the nephew's birthday, and Gustav happens to be there, and they have cake, open presents, as Gustav got the nephew a few of the films he worked on DVD, while Agnes says they don't have a DVD player because the family barely watches films anymore at night as nighttime comes, and they have after party drinks, and Nora pushes Gustav about how he doesn't know them at all, which was a tad bit depressing, as she is led to believe everyone is mad at Dad, which sounds familiar for reasons I don't wish to get into myself and my personal experiences, but that's not what this show is all about, as we see Nora acting on stage while people watching her, but it is powerfully told from start to finish. Gustav visits his friend Peter to ask him for something while having a drink with him, and that is talking to others at Netflix, as they want to say in the script. And he gets back home at night and calls Nora, as she doesn't answer the phone, and he leaves a message while drunk about why he's not a fan of theater, and wakes up the next morning and cleans up the mess on his table and does a reading with Rachel and go through some things on the script as she tears up, which was powerfully acted by Elle Fanning, as this movie is powerfully acted from start to finish. Rachel asks about Gustav's mother. We move on to a file room with someone whom I'm unclear on who it was. I gives it to Agnes, looks at some files of Corinne Urgens, as they show reports of her as something to do with the Nazis, which was heartbreaking. And sometimes this movie was heartbreaking while she sees her son playing with the other children, as well as Gustav, and Gustav gets the idea of Agnes' son being in the movie as a kid character. But Agnes tells Gustav she has to think about it, while Rachel studies her lines and tries an accent of her own, as she does her hair to brunette. She dyes her hair to brunette, And Gustav believes that she is distracted, but she's just tired, and Rachel meets with Nora about why she didn't want the role, and Rachel believes it was meant for her, while Rachel is led to believe Gustav made a mistake on hiring her because she can't get a hold of the character. And the score was pretty good, as it comes in on the right time as in the movie. Gustav and Peter talk, and we move on to Agnes and her family seeing a play. Nora is involved in, but not so much Gustav, as she's disappointed in that. But she gets through the performance, and after the show, that sees Agnes and the family, as Nora is depressed about her father not being able to see her in her play, and she's so depressed she has no choice but to stay home from her performances. And I feel really bad for Nora, as she does a good job pulling off depressed. Agnes decides her son Eric, that's his name, I couldn't put that together, shouldn't be in Gustav's movie because she doesn't want big attention for her son, and have an intense argument about it until Eric comes home, and Gustav leaves, and nighttime comes, and Rachel comes by the house and decides to quit the movie because she doesn't want to let him down, but doesn't feel right doing the film, and she asks him to recast the role of Nora, as he has to think about it because Nora didn't want to do the film in the first place. And Gustav sits outside to think about it and flips off the heavens. And the next day comes, and Agnes visits Nora because of her depression. And in my opinion, this movie is well shot and well made. Nora looks at the script once more while Agnes cleans up her place and decides to do it after all because it reminds her of her past. And Agnes decides to put Eric in the movie as well as Gustav is in the hospital, and Nora and Agnes visit him there, and see he can be a flirt with the nurses and changes up the decoration and of the house. And they filmed the scenes with Eric's character going to school before Nora's character commits suicide, which was in Gustav's script. But Eric's character forgot his mobile, and here's how I know they were filming. It was the blue screen that made it look so obvious, and as it turns out, they were filming Gustav's movie, and they cut it after Nora's character goes in the room. And I like the fact they're finally working together in this project with Eric, and the climax was very well done, as this movie was. But what did I think? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 8.2 out of 10. The cinematography was beautiful in Norway throughout. Well, I liked the characters as we get introduced to them on screen, and the performances by Renate Reinsve, Stellan Skarsgård, Inga Ebb's daughter Lilius, and Elle Fanning were fantastic, as Stellan Skarsgård is the best performance in the movie, as he steals the movie from the other actors, in my opinion, despite I have not seen The Secret Agent yet. But I'll get there. This is so far going to win the best foreign language film, as it's a pretty good film despite the movie's 80% subtitled. But sometimes this movie was confusing on what it was talking about, but I eventually got it, and that's a good thing. I was okay with the editing choices in this movie, despite, like I said, it took a while for me to understand what was going on in the movie. But eventually, like I said, I got it. And again, I was okay with it. As the production design and set decoration was well done in this whole movie, and the screenplay is great. And I don't believe it'll get the Oscar for it, but it was great. The movie was a tad bit depressing, but it was powerfully told from start to finish. And this is a solid recommendation for the movie, as this is powerfully acted by the actors from start to finish. And sometimes it was very heartbreaking, and the score comes in at the right times. And it was pretty good, as this was a pretty good movie. We'll see how The Secret Agent will go. But I'm glad I saw this movie first, so I could prepare for The Secret Agent. But at the end of the day, it's well done. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with a couple of movies that are nominated: Hamnet and The Secret Agent, like I just brought up. And until then, and the Oscar goes to.